Hey, folks, welcome to our weekly Amazon interview coaching live from Day One Careers. My name is Evgeny. I'm one of the co founders of Day One Careers, and I'm going to be starting our session today. And hopefully, Gigi will join us a little later, so she's running just a tiny bit late. So, folks, before we get to it, I'm going to just quickly give you an overview of what we're doing here, how this conversation runs, and how you can get the best value out of it. So, I'm the co-founder of Day One Careers. Gigi and I run this business. We are both former Amazonians. We're both former hiring managers, former marketers, and interviewers. And Gigi, on top of everything, also was a bar raiser at Amazon. And at some point in time, what we realized is that even the candidates with the strongest functional profiles often would struggle to get through the interview process at Amazon because their behavioral interviewing skills weren't up to scratch. So we both started our individual interview prep businesses, and then we merged them together as Day One Careers, and then the rest is history. So we run the show for you guys to answer all of the questions that you may have about behavioral interviews at Amazon. The way that the show works is you ask us a question here in the chat. So get to the chat. If you are on YouTube, there's the chat. If you're joining on X, unfortunately, X hasn't yet implemented a way for you to ask questions, but I've got the show running here on my phone. So if you at me on X, then I should be able to pick it up and I will answer it here. And for some reason, LinkedIn didn't start today. So hopefully, if you manage to join through YouTube or X, then you guys will benefit from the show as well. Anyhow, so if you're on YouTube, paste your question into the chat. If you have a long question, just make it multi-part because you'll very quickly see that YouTube will limit you, like how many characters you can use as a question. And keep your questions to all things behavioral, folks, because myself and Gigi, we used to be marketers functionally, but Amazon has thousands of functional, various different functional job families. And if you have an interview for a data center construction manager and you want some tips on the functional side of the interview, then unfortunately, this is just not our cup of tea. But if your questions are about behavioral interviews, then they're exceptionally uniform across all job families, and we will be able to lend you some expertise here. Now, if you've got something that's very, very generic, like, oh, I've got a behavioral interview next week, do you have any tips? Then for something very broad and general, I would say just refer to the stuff that we have in our YouTube channel and our blog, because that's why we've got all that content there. But otherwise, let us know about your situation. Tell us what your concern, question is, and we're going to try and answer as much as to the best of our ability. Apologies, I'm a bit ill today, so I might be coughing from time to time. So hopefully next week it's going to be a bit smoother. But I'm going to start bringing questions here on the screen, and I'm just going to go and answer them one by one in the priority. And meanwhile, folks, keep those questions going because the show is for you at the end of the day. Okay, cool. So we'll start with SR71. So SR71 is our long-time viewer. Hello, SR71. And the question is, hi, is it true that if you leave Amazon in the first year or even before the completion of the second year, you have to return the signing bonus and relocation money? Does that also apply to the international hires? So there are some provisions in your contract that will stipulate that your signing bonus is returnable. I believe, and I don't remember for sure, but I believe it's 2 years, because what happens is typically your sign-on bonus will be spread across 24 months, and it's used to tie you over from a cash-heavy compensation package into a cash and stock model, which is what Amazon practices. And so conversely, if you join and and you leave, then you'll have to then, depending on what's in your contract, right, you might have to return indeed your relocation package and your bonus. So do inquire with your recruiter on the terms of the specific role, but I believe that is indeed the case. The only thing that I can say to you is SR71. It's something that you'll see in many companies. It's not just Amazon. So these tend to be standard, I would say, standard conditions to companies that compete for the same talent pool as Amazon. And obviously everyone does it their own way, and everyone's terms are different. But do inquire about this with your recruiter. This is nothing that they should hide from you. It's a fairly standard term in the contract, so they should be able to help you. But yes, I do believe there are some provisions like that. And then there's another question from SR71. Apologies, guys, for the occasional cough. Also, is it true that if you're put on a PIP, you're on your way to being fired shortly? So a PIP is an internal coaching plan that many companies adopt, not just Amazon. So a PIP is a very universal term. I don't particularly remember who invented it, but the earliest I've encountered the whole idea of differentiation of talent, and the idea of kind of the bottom 10, the kind of the mid 70, and the top 20, um, is actually when reading Jack Welch's book about him building the system in General Electric, and he credits General Electric as being massively improved as a performance culture as a result of that. And indeed, the bottom 10 is put on the PIP. Or if your individual performance isn't up to scratch, then you also put in the PIP. Just about every Fortune 500 company practices it, and the overall question is the overall answer is no. If you're put on a PIP, it does not automatically mean that you are fired. Now, the hiring manager that put you on a PIP might, in their head, have an idea that, oh, this person is going to be fired, right? Is that the right idea to have in your head when you put someone on the PIP? Absolutely not. No, it isn't. And Amazon and many other companies have a successive chain of different performance coaching and performance improvement methods, and some formal, some informal, which all are there to accomplish a couple of things. Number one, let you know that things that your performance is not up to the bar. Provide you with feedback on where exactly it isn't up to the bar, and then hopefully offer you ideas and guidance on how you could improve. But at the end of the day, it's your job to do it as an employee. So the employer's job is to point it out to you, and if their talent management practices are good, and to offer you both an opportunity to improve performance as opposed to just firing you on the spot, and also some coaching guidance and some resources. But at the end of the day, it's the job of the employee to step up to the performance mark. And so if you're at the PIP, it means that your performance hasn't been great, whether that's because you ended up being stack ranked at the very bottom, or maybe that was because individually you didn't hit your performance mark. But it's definitely not the end of the road, however, whatever the hiring manager may think. Okay, so let's keep going. So we've got some shout outs here. I'm just going to I love bringing out shout outs, guys, because at the end of the day, this is why we're doing this. So here's Surya telling us that you got selected into Amazon. Thanks for all your videos. You're welcome. That's why we do what we do, and obviously, Gigi does the bulk of the creation of videos for YouTube. So credit to her. Um, and so you remember one live we discussed how your interview went for only 15 minutes. It was scheduled for 30 minutes, and then I was able to master my stories, and your videos played a vital role. Love from India. Amazing. Huge support from London here. Well done. Wishing you a long and prosperous and exciting career at Amazon. Right. Now let's keep going. So here's a question from Amir. Um, oh, actually, this is not a question. So this is another shout. So you did your final 4 loop interviews on Wednesday. All in all, had 16 interviews and around 5 questions per interview. That's a lot. Yeah, not all I do is wait and see. Thanks for your advice. It was very good. Amazing. That's great. Great to hear, Amir. Okay. So here's a question from Amazonian. I gave a loop round of interview yesterday, and this is how I think it went. Out of 10 questions, I answered 8 to the point, so 80% confident. Another one question made 2 errors. And then I have no idea. What else is there? Okay, I think you've got this question repeated here somewhere. Okay, so I've jumped the queue just to make sure I locate all the parts of the question of the Amazonian. So I gave a final 4th round of interview today, and this is how I think it went. Out of the 10 questions, I answered 8 to the point. So 8% confident. Another one question made 2 errors. What are your chances? I have no idea, honestly, because remember, um, everyone during your loop, everyone takes notes. And when they take notes, the reason why they do that is because they don't make the decision to hire you or to not hire you right there on the spot. They may have an idea, like a feeling based on their interview, their encounter with you. But even if they do have that idea and the feeling, they still need to go through the notes and they need to write up a justification why they want to vote one way or the other. And then during the debrief, when everyone comes together and compare notes, everyone needs to discuss. And then folks who might have, whose initial impression might have been to be not inclined to hire a candidate, they might change their mind. And it's the same with those who wanted to hire the candidate and vice versa. So yeah, it's very very hard to know what your chances are. You just need to wait and see. And also again, um, your impression of an interview as a candidate versus the reality on the interviewer side, um, they overlap sometimes, but in most cases they don't overlap because um, interviewers are being trained not to reveal their cards and not to lead the candidates on. Also, when you say errors, what were those errors, right? And which parts of the interview were those? Because the errors, I guess, if you have a coding round and you need to solve algorithmic problems, then yes, you can have objective errors there. But with regards to behavioral interviews, what you might think is an error might not be an error. So they're a bit more subjective. So give it some time. Don't stress, don't panic. There's not much you can do anyway, right? And you should just you should just focus on things that you can improve as standard. So yeah, let's agree that we're going to be paying attention only to things that we can control, right? Cool. So let's keep going. So here we now have a question from GB. I think we have 2 questions. Apologies. I think we had an issue with the LinkedIn stream, but it just came up to me and said, "Oh, do you want to go live again?" And of course, of course, I want to go live on LinkedIn. Who wouldn't? Right, GB. Here you go. Thanks for the insights you share. My first question is: can I use the same example for written assignment as you have, or may I use for phone screen and loop? And the answer is yes, you can, because your written assignment evaluation is just the evaluation of your writing. It doesn't go into the evaluation of your interview responses. If that makes any sense. So they only scare it. They only score it as pass or fail for writing specifically. So yes, you can. I do need to have a little tea, guys. Sorry, I'm a bit ill today. For those of you who joined a bit later, so I'm doing a bit of coughing. Sorry, and I'm doing a bit of tea. Mm, okay, let's keep going. So you have another question here, GB. So second question is, does customer obsession only refer to end consumer, or could it be a retail customer selling the end product? Literally anyone. So Amazon defines a customer as anyone who consumes the output of your work, which means if you work in a cross-functional environment, you will inevitably have internal customers, and your external customers could be both the end users and um, B2B customers, if you work in a business that serves other businesses. So, literally, any entity, whether human or legal, that consumes the output of your work could be your customer. So, that typically should lead to a lot more stories that you can think about now that you know that it's not just the end users that can be your considered to be your customers. Right. Let's keep going. So here's a question from John. I'm interviewing for a TAM position and have my loop interview later this week. I've been told they will now be asking about 6 pillars of well architected framework. What sort of questions can I expect? Um, no idea. And the reason why is because this is a functional question specifically related to what they believe to be the requirement for a TAM position. So if you don't know what it is, I'd be googling it like there's no tomorrow. Sorry guys, and again to everyone, we did cover this in the very beginning of the show. If Amazon has thousands of job families, and Gigi and I are experts on behavioral interviews only because they are the same across everywhere. But questions like these, they do relate to functional assessments, and you see, John, for things like this type of assessment, the teams can decide how they how they assess candidates in the functional space as they want, right? It's not as uniform as behavioral interviews. So hopefully you'll find the answer. Right. So let's keep going. So I have a question here from Ayan, but before I answer the question from Ayan, guys, this is the last question that I have in the queue. So I still have 40 minutes, folks, and I'm here. I'm here despite being ill. I'm here for you for 40 minutes. So let's keep those questions going. Mm, as long as you can bear with my coughing and slurping tea to help me out. Okay, so Ayan, in case I am not able to recall any situation, can I say I can't recall anything right now? Can you please ask another question? Or should I do in that case? Can I have short notes with you? Ooh, there's a lot of questions. So let's just maybe unpick all of those. So let's start from the back end of your questions. So can I have notes with me? Yes, you can. Have memory aid in any form that works for you. We've had candidates who had memory aids as whiteboards behind the monitor. We had folks who, for some reason, preferred post-it notes or Google Sheet or Excel or just about anything that works for you. The best format that we found for the memory aid is a bulleted out story. So as opposed to writing it as a script, you just bullet it out with the key elements in the star format, or in our Day One Careers answer model if you're taking our courses. And this allows you to be more flexible, because if you have a script on a piece of paper, and you get a conversational interviewer who starts asking you questions as soon as you started sharing your story, then you'll find it very difficult to get back. So bullets are best, and memory aids are absolutely fine. Just don't read from a script, but otherwise it's totally fine. It's not a memory test. And if you can't recall any situation, so first of all, if you can't recall a situation in that goes against a particular question, there are two outcomes, or there are two possible reasons why that's happening. Number one, the right situation is sitting in your memory, but you are, your brain isn't allowing you to kind of, to go and fish it out and pick it up, right? But it's there. You just need to help your brain to kind of go and pick it out from the pile of stories that's sitting there. Um, or you honestly, you don't have that very context that they're looking for in a question, right? And the way to deal with with these situations, with the reasons why you can't actually recall a situation is different, and because you actually have no idea, because when you're in an interview and you just find yourself blank, like you can't recall a question, you don't know which one it is. You feel like, well, there's nothing that I've got. I've got nothing, right? So first things first, always make sure that, so when someone asks you a question, an interview question, you go, that's a great question. I'm just going to take a moment to gather my thoughts and write the question down. And then you go and you physically write the question down. Now, we recommend writing the question down with your hand, as handwriting. Why? Because it uploads the question into your short-term memory, and you'll find it a lot easier to keep yourself on track and to make sure that you're answering the questions being asked and not anything else. And as you're writing the question down, just underline underline the keywords in the question. Why is that important? It aids the understanding of the question. Now, we have plenty of candidates, trust me, we coach candidates who come to our coaching sessions that we run, who start answering the question that are never asked, or who say to us exactly what you're saying. Oh, I just can't come up with a situation. And then after we work together, and like, no, actually, I can remember two situations. And in order to get to that place where your starting point is, I'm blank, can't remember anything, to, oh no, actually, I can recall two or three situations. Mention that you're going to take some time to write the question down and to gather your thoughts together. Write the question down, underline the keywords, and then see what happens, because that will improve the chances that if the real situation is somewhere there sitting in your brain, that your brain will fish it out. Okay. Step number two, make sure you fully understand the question. If the question sounds cryptic, and let's be honest, some of them do sound cryptic, always clarify the question with the interviewer. Don't feel like clarifying the question with the interviewer is not something that's encouraged or is problematic. No, the interviewer isn't trying to catch you out. They're really trying to hire you. Like they get 0 points from anywhere, from themselves, their managers, or anyone else, for not hiring candidates that could have been eligible and could have passed the interview if only they understood the question well. Like, no one benefits from it whatsoever. So it's in their interest to clarify until you get the question. Okay, so as I mentioned, step two, if the first step didn't work, clarify the question. Say, okay, so your question is, so it sounds like you want me to share a story where I had a complex problem and I solved it with a simple solution. What do you mean by simple solution? What, like, just like elegant, or what do you mean by that? Well, what I mean is blah 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 blah. And as you hear this clarification of the question, trust me, your brain is busy working. That little that little claw that's looking for that piece of memory in the memory of your stories. It's looking for it, and it now has much better guidance to come and fish out the story. Okay, now if you're completely blank, so none of these things work, then just tell the interviewer, sorry, unfortunately, I don't seem to have this very specific context, um, and then try to volunteer something similar. If you have a similar story, volunteer. Just condense it in a little skeleton. Share it with the interviewer and see if they will say, "Oh yeah, well that sounds like an interesting one. Why don't you share it?" Um, if you have absolutely nothing similar to volunteer, then you just have to come clean and say, unfortunately, I don't really have anything even similar to this. Do you mind trying to ask me another question? And I'm not going to lie to you, right? We don't lie to candidates on these shows. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not an ideal situation. It's not an ideal situation. But that's how you handle it, because if you don't have it, you don't have it. Don't invent stories, because you'll be found out. And here we have Gigi.
Hello. I'm so
Hello.
sorry I am late.
No, we everyone's here for you, let's be honest. Everyone's just
Stop.
waiting here for you.
Stop.
Mm.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Also, I'm a bit ill, and I'm
Oh,
slurping and I'm coughing and I'm slurping tea, and I'm sure that everyone just wants to say, look, just just get our Amazon into you with here. So
okay. So
So let me tell you where. Well, you know where
I
we are.
found you. I found you. Yeah. So will I pick the next one from Javier?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Right. So hello, Javier. Right. Is Amazon a goog? I assume you mean good place to work in terms of conciliation. Now, I don't know what you mean by conciliation, Javier, because my definition of the word conciliation doesn't make a lot of sense in this context. So I'm just going to answer the is Amazon a good place to work? And then if you've got a point of clarification you want to share, then do let me know at the bottom. So, is Amazon a good place to work? Everyone you ask is going to give you a different answer. And that is exactly the same situation you would find if you asked 100 employees of Microsoft or 100 employees of Google or 100 employees of PricewaterhouseCooper. Everyone has their own experiences. So some people have amazing experiences and it will be the best place they've ever worked in their entire lives. And other people will have terrible experiences and it will be the worst place they've ever worked in their entire lives. And that would be exactly the same if you profiled the same number of individuals at any other company on the planet. So I don't definitively feel I can answer yes or no to that question because everybody's experiences are different. So all I will do is share with you my experience of working at Amazon, and I will ask Yevgeny if he will share his experience of working at Amazon. And the best thing you can do is ask a few different people about their experiences, and then you can just make a judgment based on that. So my experience of working at Amazon was divided into two parts because I worked for two different teams across the 5 years that I was there. I worked for Prime Video and I also worked for Amazon Fresh in the context of the local stores, if any of you have Amazon Fresh stores where you live. So working at Prime Video was incredibly challenging. The workload was quite significant. I worked hard. It was endlessly interesting. It was intellectually stimulating in ways I have never had intellectual stimulation in another job. I worked with the smartest people I have ever worked with. I learned more in 1 year working there than I had at probably 5 or 6 years working in my previous roles. I loved the intellectual stimulation. I loved the creativity. I loved the analytics. I was less keen on some of the politics that existed in that team. But again, politics is something that people face at every single organization. I challenge anyone to say that they work in an org where politics doesn't rear its head. So I worked extremely hard and I found it incredibly rewarding in return for that working extremely hard. Moving on to my other role, I didn't have to work as hard there as I did at Prime Video because it was in a startup mode. So we weren't kind of running and running and running and trying to deliver volume and revenue, etc., every single day. We were building something new from scratch. So I was able to do that a bit more of a leisurely pace than I was able to operate when I was in Prime Video. I enjoyed that job immensely as well. It was a very different job. It was a space that I'd never worked in before. So I got to learn new things that I probably would never have learned, and no other organization would have given me an opportunity to do. So, broadly speaking, I found my Amazon career to be very rewarding in terms of the return on investment. There's no question I worked extremely hard, um, but looking back, I am very, very pleased I made the decision to move to Amazon. It gave me, I think, more than I gave it, would be my broad summation. So, Yevgeny, why don't you tell us about your experiences and then Javier can take that away with him?
I mean, for me, Amazon gave me a transition from non-tech to tech, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. I mean, I came into Amazon. I interviewed for Amazon with the feeling that I'm interviewing for my first ever job, and I really loved that feeling because I think before I before I came to Amazon, I ran out of motivation and steam in the previous industry that I was part of. I learned a ton of new skills, which again would be impossible to learn anywhere else if I was just continuing, kind of building and extending my career where I was working before. Um, I worked harder and more intensely than I've ever worked in my entire life. And at the same time, I had three children under 2 years old. And somehow the whole thing just worked out. I don't know how it worked out, but it's interesting. I've completely redeveloped my relationship with work and life balance because previously for me, it always seemed to be has to do with the amount of time, um, and I never felt like I had enough balance. But then I came to Amazon, which isn't necessarily famous, let's put it that way, for work and life balance, and somehow I ended up achieving that balance. I don't think necessarily this had to do with Amazon doing anything about it. It's just the job was very interesting and exciting, and I was highly motivated to do it. So Amazon gave me all these things, and in both of my roles, I had absolutely different challenges. And to be honest, if I didn't have a once in a lifetime opportunity to work at Apple, I probably would have continued working at Amazon. So there you go. Had a great time. Had a blast. Hope you will too.
Cool. Right. Do you want to pick the next one?
Yay! Let's do that. Okay,
We've
so
got
here's
Great
another one.
Britain there.
Yes, we have a GB. So my bar raiser interview has a DEI role. Should I expect a DEI question, or can anyone in the panel um, ask any question on LPs? Um, so the bar raiser having a DEI role, I'm just gonna assume. I mean, logically, here's how it should go. So the bar raiser is not meant to be part of your team. I mean, I believe they can be part of your wider organization, but they're meant to be as removed from the team that's hiring as possible, right? And so, um, if the bar raiser is there, that's outside of your team and not in the same functional area as you, so as in the functional area isn't DEI, then essentially the bar raiser will just stick to behavioral questions. And the fact that they have a DEI title just means that they happened to work in a DEI role. So I wouldn't be expecting them to ask you DEI questions unless DEI is your functional area. But even then, the bar raiser is meant to be removed from, you know, from the team as far as possible. But I don't know, TJ. TJ, what do you think? Am
Okay,
I
so I
getting
think I know where this question is coming from.
Where is it coming
I may
from?
be wrong, but I think I know where it's coming from. So, GB, I don't know if you have a copy of the Amazon interview question bank. I haven't seen it of late, but my understanding of the Amazon interview question bank is that for each leadership principle, in recent times, DEI questions have been added to the list of possible questions within each leadership principle. So if your question is my DEI skill based bar raiser more likely to choose one of the DEI questions associated with the leadership principle that they have been assigned on the Amazon interview question bank? Who knows? They might, because it might be their bias and their preference, or they might actually prefer one of the other questions on the list for the particular leadership principle that they are assigned and pick one of those. So if I was you, I would not assume, if you do in fact have the AI QB, and where I think this is coming from is where it's coming from, I would not assume that they will auto default to the DEI questions on the AIQB, not least because, as I understand them, they're not the greatest questions anyway, because sometimes it's quite hard to make DEI questions associated with dive deep. So I wouldn't assume a default that they'll ask you DEI, and just treat them in the way that you would treat anyone else on the interview panel in terms of how you prepare for questions from them, which is, if you know the leadership principles that each of them is going to be asking you, which some candidates do, make sure you've got a couple of stories for each of those leadership principles that will potentially cover any of the questions that they ask you on that leadership principle. If I'm wrong and that is not the source of your question, then default to what Yevgeny said, which is they have to ask questions based on the leadership principle that they are assigned, not anything to do with their particular job specialty.
Cool. Do you want to pick the next one?
Yeah. Okay. So, man. Oh, did you do the dancey thing?
No, no. Maybe you can
Okay.
do that then.
Okay, let's just answer man and then we'll do the dancey thing. How does the interview decide if the candidate is raising the bar? Okay, for the corporate programs such as military and pathways programs. Okay, so the process is exactly the same, man, as it would be if they were doing it for any other role being interviewed for. Essentially, you're being tested for two things. Functionally, are you able to do the job, and do they think that you've got a top end skill set compared to what they're looking for? And number two, are you a cultural fit? Are you demonstrating a large number of the leadership principle behaviors that they're looking for and that they've tested you for? When they leave your interview and they go and they assess their data that they've gathered, and they go and talk to each other in the debrief, they're essentially, even though they're testing you for two things, there are essentially three mental processes that are going on when they're assessing the data that they've gathered for you. The first is, as I've described, functionally, do you have the skills at the top end of the skill set of the scope of the role that they're looking for? Number two, have you demonstrated the behaviors of the leadership principles, and how many of those behaviors have you demonstrated? The more you demonstrated, the stronger you appear to be in terms of that leadership principle. But the third mental process that they're also going to be doing is they're kind of combining those first two things in their heads, and then they are looking internally and mentally and comparing you to everybody else operating at the level that you're interviewing for currently in that role across the organization. And what they're asking themselves is man, based on the stories that have been shared with us, do we believe that only the top half of people that we see operating every single day at that level in that job family do we believe that only that top half could possibly have achieved what man achieved in the stories that they've shared with us? If the answer is yes, both when you think about it yourself and then when you discuss it with everyone else at the panel and everyone agrees, or maybe not everyone agrees, but the bar raiser and the hiring manager certainly agree. If the answer is yes, then you're bar raising. If the answer is actually, on average, we think that pretty much anyone at that level could have done what man described to us in their stories, then the answer is no, and you are not deemed bar raising. And that is no different for whether you are operating coming through in military pathways or whether you're coming in from any other role. I appreciate the context is different and it's a little bit trickier because you might be comparing someone who has been I don't know, a mechanical engineer on nuclear submarines versus someone who is currently operating as an operations manager in an FC, just an example of one of my clients who recently got hired, the comparison is a little bit trickier than it would be if you are comparing someone who is currently working in an operations role in an FC to people who are inside Amazon and working as an operations role in an FC, but the principle remains the same. Those are the processes that they have to go through. Anything you'd add to that, Evgeny?
No, I think it's all very detailed.
Right. Should we do the dancey dancey thing
Yes,
then?
please.
Okay, so this is Yevgeny's favorite bit. So, dancey dancey thing, folks. Yevgeny and I clearly we work really hard to give you some amazing, amazing free content. Obviously, you're familiar with the YouTube channel, but maybe some of you have been to our blog and our website where we have tons of articles and really, really helpful information for those who want to get hired by Amazon. We have a small request in return. What we would love if you would do is whenever you are looking at any of our videos or joining us live here, that you give some engagement signals to YouTube. What do we mean by engagement signals? It's either a thumbs up, a like for the video itself, or maybe just leave me and Yevgeny a little message underneath the video. Loads of people leave messages telling us that they've got hired, which we absolutely love. But even a question or just a hi is deeply appreciated. What that does is it then tells YouTube that the content that you are watching and that you've given a hi or a thumbs up to is good content that they have very cleverly, because they're such geniuses, targeted and surfaced to the right people. And then effectively, they will then increase the probability of our content surfacing when other people use the same key search terms that you did. So I'm going to ask you to spend literally 15 seconds giving this particular stream a like, and then we will move on to the rest of your questions. And whilst we do that, I'm going to play a little video clip for you. I did the Mexican last week, so we're going to go for disco this week, folks. This does not feature Yevgeny in this one. I do owe him some new ones, but we've been too busy for me to spend time doing that. But I will at some point create some new ones. So for now, folks, enjoy this, and please do give us a thumbs up. Live to stream. Live to stream. Live to stream. Okay. Thank you, folks. I can see how many of you have liked it, by the way, because I'm looking at YouTube here on the left, and the number is not blowing my mind, folks. So please, if you could just give it a like, I would greatly appreciate that, as would Yevgeny. Right. Do you want to go on to the next one, Yevgeny?
Yes. Well, I did lose where we were. Do you know who the
We
next one is?
were under GB, we went to man, and now the next person is Maurizio.
Maurizio. Okay. I was requested my expected salary, and I kind of rebuilt the TC based on the various information, but I'm not sure. How can I request confirmation to the recruiter? Confirmation of what? This is what I'm thinking. Because I guess confirmation if your TC estimate is correct. So let's just go back. The fact that you've rebuilt TC based on the various information, it's good. But I guess what did you build? Did you use all the different estimators to arrive at the total compensation number that you're interested in? And if so, yes, share it with a recruiter, because I guess you know already that at Amazon it's not just about salary, it's salary, bonus, RSUs, and indeed at the end of the day it's the total compensation target to which Amazon will try to manage your compensation. So if you've already done the work to figure out what total compensation figure you want, share it with them, and just make sure it's ambitious enough, and it's fair and ambitious and benchmarked, so that when the offer comes, you haven't lowballed yourself. You can still get out of the situation, but it's just going to be easier if the figure that you provided as a total compensation is the right one. It's ambitious and it's fair, right? if your question is it okay if the recruiter is asking you for a salary expectation and instead you respond with a TC expectation? Yes, totally. And that's the right thing that you've done. Anything you would add, Gigi?
Nope, nothing. Perfect. Okay, so let's just move on to this one. Amazonian. Okay, this is ambitious. Can I write up a better response story and send it to the recruiter after the loop because I feel I didn't pick the right story just for that one last fifth hour question? Nope, I'm sorry. Only data gathered in the actual interview can be used as evidence to assess you. So, no, I'm sorry. There's no point in doing that. It won't go anywhere. If you really feel you just picked one bad story out of all of the other stories that you were able to give in the interview, really don't stress about it. The reality is, candidates always have some weaker stories and some stronger stories. There's often a trend, which is the first story a candidate shares in their first interview tends to be the wobbliest, and the last story a candidate shares in their last interview tends to be the wobbliest. The first because they're just not into the vibe yet, and the last because they've probably run through all of their good stories at this point and they're now scraping the bottom of the barrel for quality stories. So, honestly, if it's just that you feel, well, there's nothing you can do about it now anyway, either way. But all I'm saying is, if it's one story that you feel just wasn't great, honestly, don't lose too much sleep over it. Everybody will have a couple of not so great ones. Let it go from your mind. There's nothing you can do about it now. Okay, next one. Do you want to pick the next one?
Yeah. So Moki is watching. Okay. How technical focused will an AWS TPM interview be compared to program manager role in retail and supply chain? How many rounds of technical interviews can be expected? Um, I don't know how many technical rounds of interviews you can expect because it also differs depending on how the hiring team wants to run the assessment. What you can expect is any role that has a T for technical in front of it, the assessment will include more technical assessment than any of the roles that are non-technical, and the program manager role somewhere in retail and supply chain will be non-technical. That being said, any hiring team can include functional assessments into their interview process, even for non-technical roles. For example, when I was hiring marketers, I would throw some questions that I believe give me an idea of how how the candidate's mind thinks commercially during phone screens, for instance. But I've known some finance managers, for example, that during their interviews, during their loops, they would have needed to build a financial model in Excel, something similar, or build a simple pivot table. So the best place to ask how many technical versus non-technical rounds you will have is the recruiter. It's typically an information that they can and will provide. Um, but yeah, anything that has a T in front of it, you can expect more technical screening. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
So I'm just doing a little bit of online research. I guess the one thing you need to obviously be prepared for is some systems design questions. I think the expectation is that TPMs will generally get tested on systems design, but exactly to Yevgeny's point, exactly how many rounds, exactly who is very much up to the team's own personal choice and preference. And the best person to ask is the recruiter. By the way, folks, if you have any questions about anything, just ask your recruiter. There's no reason why you shouldn't reach out and ask your recruiter. They may not be able to answer the question either because they don't have the knowledge or because they're not allowed to, but there are no black marks against your name for reaching out and asking questions. As long as you're asking politely and you're not kind of harassing them, then it should be no issue at all. Okay. All right. So let's put you back. Oh, Maurizio is asking, what does DEI mean? So DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Just an FYI. Bit of a buzz thing at the moment, DEI. Okay, so let me just pull another one then. So, oh, how would you pronounce that? Ayan?
Ayan.
Ayan. Okay, Ayan. Thank you, Evgeny. I'm interviewing for a vendor manager role. The recruiter told that along with LPs, I will be questioned on functional competencies. God, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't get my mouth around these words. As well, like negotiation, stakeholder management, ambiguity, process improv, right? Anything else that can come up under this category question mark? Okay, so again, Yevgeny and I can't specify exactly what functional questions you're going to get. There is so much ability from a management point of view to pick and choose what they want to test people on from a functional point of view, because obviously different roles have different functional focuses. Although a job title may be vendor manager and 20,000 people might have a job title of vendor manager, the emphasis within each of those different roles on the leadership principles is going to vary. People who are vendor managers for hundreds of very, very small vendors are probably going to need to lean into different leadership principles than people who are vendor managers for just a few massive vendors. So I would just take what your recruiter has given you here, take that seriously, and focus your preparation on those areas. I don't think you want to be trying to find other things to focus your preparation from if your recruiter has already given you a nice specific list. Evgeny, did you have something you wanted to add? I saw your little finger go up.
One thing,
Go on.
P&L. Just make sure you can read and understand a profit and loss statement. That's all.
Okay. Do you want to pick the next one?
Yay. Right. I think it's Marine. Maroin. Okay. Well, this is where my fledgling knowledge on how to pronounce non-English sounding names completely got destroyed. So apologies for that. We're back to normal, regular butchering of everyone's
We
names.
love a good butchering, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Okay, so what is a good data when telling a story, especially if no concrete numbers could be presented when answering behavioral questions? At the bottom of it all, good data is a fact or something that sounds like a fact. In an ideal world, you'd want to be presenting data that you can plot on a number line so that when you're talking about objectives and results, you can very clearly demonstrate that you've produced an impact, especially if your results were further along to the favorable end on the axis, on the number line than your objectives. But if that doesn't seem to be possible, then you need to share other facts that demonstrate that you produced impact and you were successful. Um, Gigi and I have approached guiding candidates on this in 55 different ways, I'm sure. My way, and Gigi will share hers, my way of guiding candidates on how do I demonstrate good data. I would say, well, at the end of the day, when you're telling a story, unless you have a situation where Amazon is asking you to share something, that doesn't have necessarily a happy ending, like tell me about a time when you made a bad decision. In most cases, you'll be sharing a story that has some sort of happy ending at the end, right? You want to demonstrate that you achieved something, solved the problem, delivered impact. In reality, when you were doing it, presumably it wasn't just you who deemed that you were successful in the end. There's always someone senior, right? Or you have a customer or you have some stakeholders. So someone came to you and said, well done, right? And typically in companies and other organizations, people don't just come and say, well done to you, great stuff, you've achieved a lot, just because you were something of the color that they liked on the day. Usually, especially senior leaders, right? They come and they either approve your proposal or support your new product launch or something like that based on some sort of evidence that you somehow presented to them, either formally or informally. So if you were indeed successful, just challenge yourself with a question. Well, how did you know? Like, how did you know you were successful? And usually the honest answer to that question is the data that you need to share, whether it's something that you plot on a number line or it's something binary, like I've achieved project X by deadline Y, which was indeed the objective. So that's how I typically guide candidates. But Gigi, what's your magic method?
Okay, so when I think about data in the context of an Amazon interview, I think about it in two parts. The first is the impact data, as exactly as Evgeny describes. When you actually did the thing and you delivered the outcome, what was the impact of that? And wherever possible, you want to be able to quantify that impact with some kind of numeric data. If numeric data isn't possible, exactly as Evgeny says, sometimes you can do something that's a little bit more anecdotal in terms of winning awards or getting email recognition from senior leaders, etc., etc. So that's one way I look at data. The other way I look at data is, yes, Amazon want data to understand the impact, but Amazon is a data centric company, which means a lot of just the everyday language that when people talk to each other, it is data centric language. No one walks past each other in the corridors and says, "Oh, we had a really good week last week," and then continues on. They walk past each other and say, "Oh, we hit 7,000 sales last week, which was 500 sales up from the week before," because Amazonians talk with data. So, the other thing I like to talk to my candidates about is wherever there is an opportunity in your narrative to talk with data, then doing so makes you sound like a natural born Amazonian. So, even if that data point isn't ultimately the impact or the point of the story itself, if there is an interesting data point that you might refer to throughout your narrative, throw it in. Because if you talk with data, you sound like an Amazonian to your DNA. That's it. That's my advice.
There you go.
Okay, so okay, I'm just going to quickly pick this one up, Yevgeny, because we can't answer it, but I don't want this person to think we're ignoring them because I don't like to ignore
Yeah,
people.
yeah, okay.
So, Mohammed, okay, you're trying to land a role as a program manager. You think you match the skills and prerequisites, but for some reason your resume isn't shortlisted. Where do you lack? I cannot answer that, Mohammed. Right. I haven't seen your resume. I haven't seen the roles that you're applying for. That's impossible for me to answer. That's not something we do, by the way, in case you were tempted to send me an email offline and send me your resume and send me the job that you're interviewing for. We don't do that. That's not a service that we provide. All you can do is try and make sure that your resume is reflective of what they're looking for in terms of the actual role itself, and make sure that your resume, or if you're in India, I think it's a CV in your country, try and make sure that your CV is packed full of data driven impacts and achievements. That's the only thing you can do. Luckily, there are many, many program manager roles that will keep coming up in Amazon. So keep trying, keep looking at your resume and asking yourself, am I showing as much impact as I possibly can? And does my resume reflect what they're looking for in the job description? Okay, let me just move on to the next one. Oh, yes, I like this question. Hi, Grace Gat. Oh, you're another GG. You're just a copy, man. There's only one original, really. Let's be honest. But I don't mind. I don't mind. Copy. What is it? Is the highest form of flattery. What's that? Not plagiarism, is it? Anyway,
Plagiarism indeed.
now, is it plagiarism is the highest form of flattery? And imitation is the highest form of flattery. That's it. Okay. So, would you suggest discussing compensation after the panel or before? Which strategy, I love the use of which there, would you recommend? My son is going into exams at the end of this week and he's studying Hamlet. So, I've been very focused on witches for a while. That just like, oh, study. Can you provide scenarios of when stocks are offered as part of the compensation package? Okay. So, in reverse order, stock is always offered as part of the compensation package from L4 and above. That is Amazon's standard total compensation model. It's a combination of base, bonus, and RSUs. Okay, which strategy would we recommend? So, everyone has their own view on this, and I don't believe there is any data to empirically prove which is the right strategy. So we're just going to tell you what we think, and then I'm sure someone else will tell you something contradictory, and unfortunately, you're on your own in terms of making up your mind which you prefer. So our position is, I would always talk about compensation at the earliest point possible in the interview process. I would make sure that I was fully armed with as much information as I could be around what is a reasonable range for my particular role in my particular geolocation. And I would be asking the recruiter to share with me the compensation range that is available for this role. The reason why I want to have that conversation at the top of the funnel is any interview is a lot of effort. An Amazon interview is an enormous amount of effort. And I personally would not want to have to go through potentially a recruiter phone screen, an online assessment, and phone screen one, a phone screen two, and then because of my level, potentially 7 rounds of loop interview, only to get an offer and then discover that Amazon is not going to offer me the pay that I would like to have for that role, and then having to reject it and walk away. Now, that's not to say that doing interviews is a complete waste of time if you don't take the job at the end of it. It's not. There's great practice and there's great value in it. But nonetheless, I prefer to be in a position to make a decision as to whether I want to invest my time in a process that at the end of the day might not actually be able to deliver me the compensation that I'm looking for. So that would be my position. I'm personally totally comfortable with asking the recruiter to give me their compensation range. And if they won't give it to me, give them my compensation range. That compensation range has to be broad enough so that I'm giving myself enough wiggle room to negotiate come the end of the actual process if they give me an offer. I personally do not purport to this whole cloak and dagger, let's not talk about compensation because I don't want you to know what I want until you decide that you really want me, because then I'm going to be in a much stronger position to be able to squeeze more out of you. I'm personally not convinced that the benefit of doing that outweighs the risk of spending all of this time on a process only to discover at the end of it that they can't pay you what you need. That's my position on it. I think Yevgeny shares that position, but I'm going to hand over to him in case he wants anything to add anything
No,
to that.
no, no. All hail.
Cool. All hail. That's so cool. Right. So we are on the hour now, Yevgeny. So shall we give away our most amazing freebies for the folks before they totter off? And then everyone can circle back to us for next week. So, oh, there we go. You put it up. You're so quick.
I put it
Reflexes.
up. I put it
Oh,
up
it's on your side. So you do the first bit and I'll do the next. No, the other way. What are you doing? That's it.
on my side. I
No,
am on the left
you.
of the screen.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. So
So
forget us.
basically, we just both need to do this.
Yes,
That
bickering
is.
old women. Right. So we do sound like a bickering old married couple sometimes, I have to say. Right. So, folks, you need to go to that link because at the end of that link is the most amazing freebie that anyone is going to give you in preparation for an Amazon interview. So, do not leave before I tell you about this. Right. So, I'm going to do it quickly so you don't get bored. The first thing that we're going to give you is what we call the plausible Amazon interview question, well, the day one careers interview question bank, which is basically plausible Amazon interview questions. So we can't give you the actual interview questions that are on the Amazon interview question bank because that would be a breach of our contract. So we have created our own version of a question bank based on our knowledge and expertise and experience in interviewing for Amazon and what we understand the leadership principles to be all about. So you cannot expect those exact questions to come up in the interview, but they are very, very useful questions to practice on and help you establish the stories that you want to tell and also practice reshaping your stories on the fly. So that's one thing. The next thing that we are giving you away for free is a free course focused on customer obsession. We have a particular teaching methodology in Day One Careers that we apply to our courses that we sell. We're giving you a little bit of a taster on that. Essentially, we have a teaching methodology that divides the leadership principles up into facets. Basically, every single leadership principle you can come at from a couple of different angles. We call them facets. Customer obsession has 4 facets. So you can look at that video and it will teach you all about the 4 different facets of customer obsession. And understanding those facets will help you pick scenarios from your career history that align to the leadership principle of customer obsession. That same video will also tell you what the interviewer is looking for when it comes to your answers. So, what are the types of behaviors that are indicative of customer obsession? You'll find that in that video as well. At the end of that video, you will find mock interviews, me interviewing me, different hair, makeup. You'll never know it's the same person, just so that you can see the whole thing kind of coming together in an actual interview itself. That particular course will, I promise you, step change your ability to craft good, relevant, customer obsession focused stories ahead of your interview. And pretty much everyone who makes it to Loop is going to be asked customer obsession questions. The final thing all of that is going to give you is access to our Day One Careers Heartbeat community, where we have over 1,000 members who you can tap up for um, mock interviews, where you can get together and you can help each other out with mock interview sessions. Quite often people are able to find people applying for exactly the same type of job family. So program managers get together with program managers and they do mock interviews with each other. It's very, very hard to find anywhere else where you can actually do that for free. So we're offering you that capability. We also have an amazing chat based tool, a bit like ChatGPT, but our own version that we have fed basically all of the information from this YouTube channel. All of those hundreds of videos that are currently in YouTube, we have slammed it all into a chat model, and you can effectively chat with that tool and ask it questions and save yourself hours trawling through YouTube. And obviously, you won't then have to look at my ugly face for that many hours. You'll get it straight as an answer from the chat model. All right, so that is it, folks. Thank you very much for joining. We have an amazing number of people joining us today. If you did not spend a couple of seconds giving us a like when I asked you earlier, please do it. It makes a big difference to where we can appear in YouTube. And obviously, it means other candidates like yourself who could do with some genuine and accurate content will be able to get it. Right, that's it. Nothing. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add, Yevgeny?
No. I
No?
think that's it. We'll
Cool.
see you guys next time.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Good luck if you have interviews coming up.
Good luck, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, Evgeny.